Welcome back, virtual car fans, to the Game of Muscle YouTube channel. In this video we're jumping into the Porsche 911 GT1 98 car in Project Cars 2, and we're going to be talking about the rather contentious and much argued over issue of the importance of graphics and shiny pixels when it comes to driving and racing simulators. But before we get into the subject that's derailed far too many forum threads, let's just appreciate the 911 GT1 98 car, because this vehicle, for me it ticks all the boxes. The exterior, absolutely phenomenally gorgeous, practical styling, aerodynamic, a car that I'd happily rub all over my body. I should get a bar of soap made in the shape of this vehicle. Just beautiful. And not only that, but functional. And though it wasn't at the time the fastest vehicle in its class, I think it actually got whipped when it came to shorter races, the key thing was it was reliable, and I think that's what got it its victories that made it famous. It's all very well having the fastest car, but if your car can't get to the end of the race, well, what's the point? And when it comes to a simulated race car for actual driving, and obviously I'm never going to drive the real car, so that's the more important part for me, it doesn't have all the ridiculous over-the-top electronics that the modern vehicles do. It's that sort of cut-off point at the end of the 90s before things started to get rather absurd. The end result is, even as a simulator car, the end drive is more raw than frozen chicken, and it's just amazing to push it around a track, especially if you're lucky enough to have a direct drive wheel. Shout out to Derpy Dirtface on Reddit. Then aside from the handling and the gorgeous exterior, the interior, you know, it's a proper car. It looks like a garden shed. You know, you've got the tools there in the form of some buttons. It's rather bland. You can tell when you need to shift. And you've got a nice IBM sponsorship visible. Unfortunately, if you're playing in 2D, you can't really admire the interior and how actually small the interior of the vehicle is. But it's just functional. And what more could you want? Which segues us to the actual topic and original point of the video, the importance of graphics with driving simulators. And my first big gripe whenever this conversation comes up on the internet is that it's almost always approached in a really simplistic binary way of just saying, yes, this game's got better graphics than this other game, and it really isn't that simple. Now, I'm going to have to do a separate video on the actual graphical components inside of driving simulators, which is probably going to take 15-20 minutes. So I'm going to do what everyone does on the internet in the forums in this video and keep things to a rather simplistic way with a lot of assumptions about what makes one game have better graphics than another, or, you know, just generically saying Project Cars 2, for example, is a very nice looking game. It has very advanced graphics, whereas, say, R-Factor 1 doesn't. Now, with that in mind, the big question, are graphics important when it comes to driving simulators or realistic racing games? And I think you can't, there's no way to really say that they're not. Of course they're important for a multitude of reasons, and not just a case of it looking nice and therefore, you know, it looks nice so it will sell more because it looks nice. At a basic functional level, graphics do pretty drastically affect the end resulting drive of a given simulator. For example, the biggest one is having a highly detailed track surface. That fundamentally defines whether or not a simulator is going to be fun to drive. I mean, it's all very well having the most realistic tyre model, suspension, nicest cars, all the content. If the track model, the actual road surface you drive on, and the surrounding track environment isn't particularly detailed or well executed, then visually and physically the end drive's not going to be realistic. And I'd say even if you're going to make the argument that the actual, say the actual drivable track mesh surface, say that's not visible, so it's not a visual component, it's just being taken in by the physics engine, stuff like having the actual track texture be correctly done with the correct amount of details for the actual tarmac texture, that has a huge effect on the perception of speed, the actual perception of where your car is on the circuit, and then the actual visual track in terms of how the curbing is done, how high the curbs are, all these other sort of little bits and bobs that are mostly visual or arguably open to artistic interpretation depending on how well a track's being executed. They do affect the end drive. And another one actually with the track markings and stuff like brake markers and how well they're done really help you in terms of nailing brake points and being consistent with hitting brake points. It gets even more complicated when you start introducing stuff like weather to a driving simulator, and you really notice this with Project Cars 2 and say R-Factor 2, where in Project Cars 2 the weather effects are a lot more clear and stuff like the drying race line and the different patches of track and whether or not it's wet or not. If that's not visually represented properly, it makes for a far more frustrating, far less realistic and much more annoying game than if it is done visually properly. And I definitely think one thing that train spotter sim fans, such as myself in many ways, can tend to do is get lost in their specific features and focus that they're looking for from a sim, and then sort of have that as being the absolute priority, and then everything else falls to the wayside. I would say, of course, though, if you're playing a driving simulator, you're coming to it with the expectation that the cars actually handle like cars, regardless of the graphics, road surface, or anything else. So, you know, that is the default position, I think, for a game if it's sold, branded and marketed as a simulator. And let's face it, there have been games released where they are sold, marketed, branded, pushed by race drivers as being an ultimate simulator, and the reality is the vehicles don't really handle like cars. That has happened quite a lot with multiple titles, so you can see why sim train spotters get annoyed by this. But at the same time, it's important to remember that just because a driving sim has good graphics doesn't mean by default it's going to have terrible handling. It also doesn't mean that because it's got good graphics it's also going to have good handling. It's you know, a separate component that you sort of have to investigate and think about on a game-by-game basis. What I think is really interesting, actually pretty awesome in the last sort of 2 years or so of driving simulators, is that the main sims on the market, most sims coming out, or that have been out for the last sort of 2 years, so Race Room Racing Experience, Assetto Corsa, Project Cars 2, iRacing, all of them are really actually getting up to a standard visually where, you know, it's not off-putting. We've kind of moved away from that R-Factor 1 era where to have a realistic simulator, typically they look pretty poor. And then what's also happened that's been a massive change is virtual reality, and just how much of a boost to the end result of the graphics that VR gives you. I mean, you literally are sat inside of a car. When you're playing with a VR headset, you feel like you're inside the car. I'd even go so far to argue, just with, say, Project Cars 2, for example, playing in VR but with all the graphics on the lowest settings is more realistic and better, graphically more exciting and practically graphically more exciting than if you were to play Project Cars 2 on a single screen with maximum graphics. That's how much of a difference VR makes. And I probably should have used that example at the beginning of the video, because that is a purely graphical difference, but it fundamentally changes the end approach, the end drive of the game. The physics are the same, but I think most people that use VR will find it, or do find it, more intuitive, and would agree it changes how they approach the driving in the vehicles. Now, I've also mostly been talking from the perspective of track racing, but I think a really good example of the importance of graphics in driving games really comes into play when you look at rally titles. And oh yes, it's time to throw more salt on Dirt 4. But I was watching actually one of the VVV videos. Check out the YouTube channel. Team VVV is a YouTube channel. But Alan Boston was saying how, because he was playing the new WRC 4012. I don't know what version they're on. I think it's WRC 7. He was playing that, and he was making a point about how rally games are kind of like about a journey. And I actually really agree with that. When it comes to rally games, and even to some extent track games, there is a sort of journey aspect of getting enjoyment from going to a location, discovering that location, going through it the first few times, but then learning it and mastering it, but actually feeling like you're in another place. Obviously with rally games, there's even more of a point because you're going from point A to point B, so it is a more literal journey like Alan was saying in his video, but again, graphics in that scenario make a huge difference to that experience and that enjoyment and that realism that exists in reality when you're driving a car around a real location, or if you were to go and do a real rally track, something I haven't done because I can't afford it. And Dirt 4 highlights just how you can't have something that's super generic repetition. It has to have a sense of solidity and a feeling of being a real world location, be that a rally game or a track game, and from that you get a huge amount of immersion, and again that really does affect your believability and how you approach the game, and then how realistic the game or simulator will feel at the end of the day. So yes, indeed, graphics are incredibly important. Obviously, sim drivers, train spotters, the focus is on the physics initially, but I think you can't understate the importance of graphics, as this guy is completely Berlin Walling us off. We need to get past him. We need to be like the barbarians breaching the Great Wall of China. We'll just take the desert route where they haven't built the wall particularly high, and it will all be good. But there you go, guys. I hope you found this video interesting. I know it's a little bit of a ramble. It's the morning. I've only had one cup of tea, so that's the consequence of that. Definitely check out this 911 GT1 98 car. Absolutely amazing. There's one in Assetto Corsa that's fantastic to drive as well. So if you don't have Project Cars 2, you don't plan on getting it, just load up in AC. It's really good fun in both simulators. But there you go. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this. Let me know if you like this sort of content where I ramble about various topics. Start an argument in the comment section. You know, you could talk about graphics, as tyre models, favourite simulator. You know, there's plenty of things to argue about when it comes to simulators. Oh, which console's better? PlayStation 4, Xbox One? Take your pick. But until the next video, guys, thanks for watching. Goodbye.